Awesome. We are live. Thank you, everyone, for joining and taking time out of your day to join us as we discuss how to build a resilient brand in a time of uncertainty. We have some really special guests that we're bringing on the platform today. And we'll start really with just introductions if we can. What we tried to do is we tried to organize the people that are joining from a post-checkout experience all the way through to fulfillment, to analytics and understanding the business. So we wanted to sort of hit each touch point of the tech stack, really getting a visual into what other brands are doing to run their business today. So without further ado, why don't we just start with introductions so we can get some context going for those that are joining. We've got Sean Corson from Udacity, Kevin Sides from Chipmunk, and Scott Knight, Alpha Omega Agency. Please just introduce yourself, maybe a quick abridged Cliff Note version of your journey and sort of the brands that you're working with and what you guys are up to.
Yeah, so I can go first. Sean Corson from Udacity. For those who don't know, Udacity has designed a number of SaaS e-commerce companies specialize in data. So we're trying to help them make meaningful data-driven decisions. Our team has, a lot of e-commerce analytics experience, direct-to-consumer companies of all sizes. So we're working with brands anywhere from, $1 million a year in sales up to $250 million a year plus in sales. Some of the brands that we work with that you may have heard of include Movement Watches, Rothy's, Who Gives a Crap, one of our favorite brands. They sell toilet paper online for those who haven't heard of them. And we were just recently named as one of 44 plus certified app partners. So that's the big news from our end.
Awesome.
Cool.
Kevin?
Yeah. I'm Kevin Sides. I work at Chipmunk. I'm the CRO here. Chipmunk is an e-commerce software and fulfillment platform, really specializing in brand shipping D2C. We work with an array of brands, just getting started to do multinational, big box retailer type brands. So yeah, excited to be here.
And I guess that's me. I'm Scott Knight at Alpha Omega. We are based out of Minneapolis, and we work with a full gamut of merchants, from startups to more of your Fortune 500 companies. Some of our clients are Goop that uses free. We're primarily Shopify Plus or a Shopify Plus partner. I guess our niche is in headless e-commerce.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. My name is Chad Rubin, co-founder of Skubana. I've been in e-commerce for a decade. Started off with Think Crucial, a home appliance parts and accessory company that sells direct to consumer. And so today it's a fireside chat. So we wanted to move away from webinars. We didn't want to speak at people. We wanted to speak with people. So if you want to chat us, please chat us. All the speakers, all the people that are participating are going to be chatting and engaging. If you have questions that we maybe missed or you want further detail on something, feel free to post it in the questions area here. But this webinar or fireside chat is really focused around how can brands be mitigating disruption or even building a resilient brand for the future. So I think we should start in logical order, right? And we're going to start really on the post-checkout experience. So this is going to start with Scott Knight, and it'll flow on down. So Scott, with your agency, I noticed you're working with a brand that I love, which is Diff Eyewear. His name happens to be Chad as well. I'm sure you probably work very closely with him.
Great,
and he's focusing really heavy on building a brand for the future, getting into retail, but also heavily optimizing his site. Is there any nuggets you can be sharing about maybe what you've seen in the speed world or the deployment world or the implementation world, especially from a headless perspective, that you can be sharing with people on the line today?
Yeah, is this post-checkout, or is this kind of in general, just in terms of performance?
I'm a performance nerd. I love speed, but when it comes to conversion, we can just give me speed, conversion, anything that you're seeing that's sort of cutting edge that other brands are doing, techniques that others can learn from on this call today. That would be great.
Yeah, for sure. I think even pre-COVID, headless and progressive web apps, it's drawn a lot of buzz lately, but in the United States specifically, the adoption is a little a little slow, but the numbers that we're seeing from merchants all across our board, like every KPI, it's just kind of mind blowing in terms of performance, in terms of conversion rates, average order volume. So adoption of a progressive web app, I think, is the number one way that you can really kind of separate yourself from the competition. And if you're an early adopter, I think you're just going to leapfrog your competition. And in terms of performance numbers, it's not necessarily how fast the platform that you're on is, right? It's not how fast BigCommerce is. It's not how fast Shopify is, right? You're sending a request to Shopify. You're getting all that information back. But now for your subsequent requests, you don't have to make that request anymore. It's local. It's not necessarily like available offline. It can be offline, but you're able to interact with the site, with the data that's now on your browser. So performance on mobile, which is like the weakest device, probably a pretty poor connection on 3G, 4G, not necessarily on Wi-Fi. You're saving that travel time to the server for the response, and so it increases conversions quite a bit. Amazon, Google, they equate 0.1 seconds latency to 1% in revenue increase. And on Wi-Fi, so 1 second translates to 10% revenue. Wi-Fi, you'll see some pretty good gains there, but really with, I think, like 70% of people shopping online, you can save an immense amount of time, and that's where we're seeing like amazing numbers on that front.
A lot of times, though, when I hear headless commerce, I hear big budget, super expensive deployments. What about for the people that don't have that kind of cheddar to spend? What do you suggest? It's like I always try to optimize my site using GT metrics and trying to give it to a developer to make that waterfall less and less, and those requests less and less. Is there anything that you can be sharing that you're seeing outside of headless that you can do to increase speed or conversion?
There's definitely a lot you can do outside of headless, to a lot of low-hanging fruit, and it all depends on if you own the platform, or if you're using like something like BigCommerce, Shopify that owns the platform itself. Speaking to like a platform-based solution like Shopify, BigCommerce, there's a lot of gains across the board in terms of just image optimization, loading in those images below the fold. It's called lazy loading images. There's definitely deferring your JavaScript. So on page load, it's not waiting for First Paint to process all that JavaScript. A lot of merchants will download a theme, and with that comes support of many different variations of the theme. And so you're including CSS, HTML that you're not using. If you're not on a platform-based solution, there's a lot you can do then with on the server side, you can cache quite a bit, before that request actually hits, say, Magento, Spree. So you're surfacing something that's on edge that can speed up performance quite a bit.
All right, and if you want to learn more, you can always hit you up offline. We'll give your contact details at the end, but we'll keep going. We'll keep getting deeper here. So now we've got Kevin. So we're going to go from post checkout. We go optimization, conversion. Now we're getting into supply chain and fulfillment. So Kevin, let's talk about 3PL work and perhaps what you're seeing from a supply chain perspective with the pandemic. What are brands adopting? What are they doing? What can others learning from this get ahead with listening on the call today?
I think we're seeing a lot of stuff become magnified with the supply chain, the issues within the supply chain. There's new stuff, but there's a lot of things that they kind of knew they had with inventory, SKUs, disposition of inventory, and now it's just 10 times worse in this environment. So I think we're seeing a lot of brands right now start to simplify, and that's the first step. Is they're starting to say, hey, where are these problems coming from? How can we simplify it? Whether it be some of their packing processes, some of the special projects we were required to do before, but at least just kind of working better with their suppliers. They're getting limited quantities of inventory, at least making sure it comes in correct, right? So I think that's the first step. So it's going out the door quickly, because most brands right now have back orders for one or many of their SKUs, right? So they're playing a time game. The other thing too they're looking at is, hey, if we know there's a clear bottleneck, especially with the carriers within the supply chain, what else can we do to create amazing experiences, right? So we're seeing a lot of brands look towards better packing experiences, just kind of doubling down on that route. Say, hey, look, if somebody is going to get it late, it better come looking, perfect and pristine. So looking at brands who custom packaging at this point, really adding that extra touch.
And just on that real quick, have you seen a brand, 'cause I love the unboxing experience, have you seen a brand who you're just like, oh my gosh, everyone should be doing it this way?
I'm trying to think of one off the top of it. I think the best brands that we're seeing that are doing stuff that I'm really impressed with is just the communication along the way, more so on just the experience of saying, hey, order is placed, giving better visibility, and even to like just the fulfillment statuses. Because most brands, right, an order's placed, you get an alert when it's shipped, you might get one that's delivered, right? That's pretty common as a consumer. And now kind of consumers are seeing like homepages on banners of, oh, shipping delays for this SKU, this area of the country is having some delays. But I think more so what we're seeing now is brands that are having just better and more touch it, right? Hey, there's delays for this SKU or this take up this long, or here's where it has in fulfillment. So we're seeing that. As far as the packing experience, I think there's a lot of brands. I just think they're doing it. I don't know. They're all doing a pretty good job. I think Brewmate's a really good example of one.
What was the name of it? What was the name of it?
Brewmate.
Okay.
They're really doubling down on both the communication as well as just the experience from the unboxing standpoint. So they do they just from custom box to some inserts. We even see a lot of brands including just like extra items and stuff like that as like kind of a thank you for your patience. So I think that's been pretty good for them. And then honestly, like we've seen a lot of brands kind of hop on board and do some version of a PPE good that they're including sometimes, which is kind of playing that up and including that. It's some branded merch when it comes to face masks, sanitizers, like even the keychains for opening doors. So seeing a lot of brands kind of adapt that way, trying to provide value, I guess, from just an unboxing experience. That's been cool to see. Yeah, and then just a lot of communication and especially with, and we look at it as like a 3-tier is communication with their employees, their partners, as well as their customers, right? And not just looking at it, how do we just adhere to the customer? I think that's where most of the focus goes versus, hey, really having a really good communication with all the partners as well. I think that's been really key for us and working with the merchants.
Cool. Yeah, I'm thinking back to the latest shipments that I've received that I appreciated. I think one was Love Every. It's a shipment for my son as per his development. And so he just turned 11 months. So he gets a new shipment of items and with really awesome branding attached to it. That company is doing really well right now. And a olive oil company in California just had really, really, really great branding that I really appreciated. So moving into sort of on the 3PL stuff, is like I've been, Skubana, we work together with tons of 3PLs. Obviously, Shipmonk is a preferred partner of ours. And what we've been seeing is there's a lot of social distancing in the pick and pack world right now because it's required, right? The proximity in which you can be around others is distant. But on top of that, the unemployment in the United States, I think it's up in August, but it's making a lot of these pick and pack employees not want to come into work. Are you seeing that? How are you communicating that to customers to making sure that you can ship in a timely way?
Yeah, so it's impacted us a ton, right? I think, and it's really interesting because looking at all 3 of our facilities, Florida, California, and Pennsylvania, we're seeing them kind of each react differently, right? Like I think at one point, Florida was kind of like bulletproof. It was like, hey, people, I guess we're seeing it now, but everyone in Florida, no problems. And Pennsylvania is very sensitive to it. And then working with the temp agencies, and even then, like you order 80 people and 6 would show up, right? So even just working, that option was a little exhausted. So we've been doing a ton of stuff from, sanitation, daily sanitation, where the employees are seeing us come in and they're like pressure washing, like all the robotics and everything every day. Partitioners from the packing stations, spreading out the packing stations. At some point, at a certain point, we were having receivings not be touched for 48 hours as we were kind of working through that. So we've been doing kind of a lot of iterations. And I think it's really every day, the required wear face masks, gloves, things like that that's provided to them. And really just having hotlines if they have a concern about something, really working through it with them. So definitely seeing that. Fortunately for us, luckily, is we did a whole wave in Florida here, and you kind of probably see them out there in the corner of the screen is we invested really heavily in automation, which is really cut down on like about 70% of the people we've had to hire this year, even with the spikes we're having. So we are having to hire more. We're battling through the issues that everyone is with the labor. but it's a little offset by a lot of the automation we've invested in that we just already had for the plans this year. So fortunately, it's kind of good timing that that's all been implemented. But yeah, we're definitely going through it and having to do a lot of communication with employees and working through those struggles. Yeah,
I've been to your warehouse, and it's probably one of the most beautiful warehouses I've ever been to. You guys have a fitness area with like rogue equipment, which I'm a huge fan of. That's made in America. You guys have like a stage area for performances and a bar. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. Along with, by the way, the automation and robotics that you built in the warehouse is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we tried.
All right, so we go from fulfillment. Is there anything else you want to share on the fulfillment side? Like, I want people to have takeaways where they're like, okay, this was an incredible time. It was the price of admission. Anything else that you're seeing that you can share from a supply chain fulfillment perspective?
I think now is the time to do two things. I think it's what can you simplify, right? And then what can you utilize technology for? For example, we're seeing brands right now like, for example, that thing I used before with Pennsylvania is a lot of brands, they get really complex in certain areas, and there's other areas they can probably get more complex in. For example, disposition of inventory. You know, it might not be good to have all your inventory in one location, right? The historic one is hurricanes in Florida in the summer, right? I want to get offset, but even the times during like these pandemics is, hey, if Pennsylvania has a really call-out rate and you have a product needs to get out, maybe having it in California or Florida could offset that. So I think there are areas to look to get a little bit more maturing when it comes to inventory disposition across multiple locations. How are you forecasting? What can you be doing from a supplier standpoint when the inventory comes in to make sure it can get out right away? Back order management, how are you managing and communicating to customers proactively versus like you're very reactive with your customer support. So I think there are aspects to simplify, and then there's the things that are becoming pain points now. How do you scale that moving forward with any type of issue? I think that's a lot of key here.
Yeah, I do think the multi-warehouse functionality is an important one. I think the days of one warehouse is over. We just brought on a brand. They sell supplements, and they're literally, as the spike happens, they just transfer their inventory to another warehouse location so they can just get around the bottleneck of the pandemic.
Exactly. And we're seeing a lot of brands do that now, and I think it's great for a lot of other reasons too. But it's so I think, and having a visibility to look into that different inventory levels, like with you guys working with you, is seeing where those warehouses are and really managing it that way versus being scared of that portion and then being stuck with this huge bottleneck potentially at one location.
So you've got Florida, you've got Pennsylvania,
and California.
Got it. Cool. All right, so then we're gonna flow into Udacity, and then we're gonna circle back around, obviously, again. But for Udacity, where you've already completed traffic, you've got conversion, and I want to discuss a little bit on the retention side. I know you're working with some great brands, a lot of them that we share in common. Why don't you share, at least at a high level, what you're seeing, and then we can start drilling in.
Yeah, it's been interesting since the quarantine, since the pandemic started. There's really, I'd say right off the bat, there was a pretty quick split between companies that were built to succeed and companies that were going to struggle. Some of that was just product market fit, right? Obviously, right away, some products just don't lend themselves well to an environment where there's fear and people are kind of saving money. A company like Love Every is a good example of the opposite of that, where people couldn't go out to Target or Buy Baby to get their kids' supplies, so they started looking online and they would discover something like Love Every. And so, yeah, as you mentioned, they've had really strong results over the last few months. So. And I think, from an analytics standpoint, the companies that are outside of product market fit, the companies that are succeeding are the ones that are really keeping a keen eye on the data and have an understanding for what that means. A good example of a way to kind of play the like taking data understanding and using that to help the business. Something that we've seen a lot of our customers deal with is items where you're really long on inventory, right? So you're looking down your list of SKUs and you understand, all right, this product's here. We have inventory for the next 12 months. I mean, we have some customers that have looked at their inventory and realized, we have inventory for longer than 12 months. And an easy way to raise cash on some of those is just discount those products, do a one-time discount on those products, raise some cash, clear out some inventory, right? Obviously, things like canceling POs, outstanding POs that you might have for those products works as well to kind of save cash. So, and I think on the on the customer side, repurchase rates, lifetime value, what a lot of our customers are seeing is, with a better understanding of which products and which channels are leading to higher repurchase rates and higher lifetime value. Once you understand that, it really allows you to optimize your marketing spend, optimize your inventory buys, kind of better understanding around which products you're offering through which channels. So I think our customers that have really had a close eye on their data, they tend to be doing well.
Yeah, so I want to double click a little bit into what you shared about like liquidating or getting rid of inventory where you have, it's obviously consuming hard-earned money that you've earned and it's not moving. One way that I've seen brands doing this is essentially taking a low velocity item and bundling them with a high velocity item. Mm-hmm. So like, that they're going to buy the high velocity item and you just maybe eke in another product into the mix to increase your average order value. You get economies of scale on the profit end of it as you're shipping it out. Have you seen any other strategies on that before we go into LTV? Because I do want to dive into that a bit.
Yeah, we tend to look at, when we look at both sort of sales velocity, we also look at gross margin per unit, right? So, and you can kind of envision those on like a quadrant where you have products that are high gross margin per unit and high sales. Those are obviously your all-stars. You have products that are high gross margin per unit and low sales. You have products that are low, and products that are high sales and low gross margin per unit. And so, yeah, that's one of the suggestions that we give to customers is, if you have a product that is high sales and low gross margin per unit, absolutely, you should be thinking about bundling that with another product. Potentially even just raising the price on that product. Obviously, if you have high sales and low gross margin per unit, people want that item. They're hot for that item. Raising the price may not be a bad idea. And that also gets into some site promotion and demotion of kind of moving items around on your site as you are you're seeing sales velocity changes and inventory.
So I just want to now move into lifetime value. How are you, because you're connecting to all these different ad platforms, you connect to Skubana. How do you piece it all together? And certainly like someone like Amazon who's not providing specific information, are you still able to pull that information, the lifetime value, and see like repeat behaviors?
Yeah, so yes, Amazon does not, they're stingy with their data, for sure, everyone knows that. We do have a proprietary householding model that allows us to match up Amazon customers with Shopify customers and kind of roll those two together. So you do get an understanding of customers that might have purchased on one platform, on both platforms. You get a better idea of, all right, this is actually one customer, not two separate customers. I think, calculating lifetime value, the calculation itself is not, it's not a difficult calculation, but to your point, it is sort of the accumulation of all this data and getting it all in the same spot that is difficult and really adds value to that, right? Calculating lifetime value for a group of customers is fine, but really the value in lifetime value calculation is comparing different cohorts of customers, looking at customers that were acquired through different channels or came, made their first purchase at different time points or first purchase using a discount. That's really where the value goes.
And Sean, I've seen Udacity's platform before under the hood. You guys have so many different reports you can generate. It's pretty incredible. But there's this over-analysis paralysis that happens. We just had our board meeting at Skubana, and I promise you, I gave them like every metric under the sun. what are like maybe the top 3 or 5 metrics you think right now, especially given the macro circumstances of what's happening, that people should be focusing on, or e-commerce brands specifically should be focusing on?
Yeah, I think the ones that are always key, that will always be key, cost of acquisition and lifetime value, I think are, everyone's going to ask about those. Everyone's going to focus on those when we've worked with customers that are going out and trying to raise financing. It's almost always the first questions they get asked from a VC firm. I think that gross margin per unit and sort of sales velocity matrix that I talked about is really important right now. I think just having a good eye on understanding which products are moving and which products are providing you with high gross margin per unit is super valuable. I think product affinity is something that a lot of our customers have been asking about as well. So understanding customers that purchase product A, what are their next most likely purchases, right? And this allows you to kind of tailor your email or SMS or any sort of retention campaigns, allowing you to kind of understand which products they want to see. So that could be they purchase product A and then they purchase product B, or it could be that they purchase 2 products together in the same cart. I think those are kind of some of the questions we get asked about the most. Okay.
So we're going to bring it full circle back to Scott here. So I'm going to share a brief story real quick. So I run Think Crucial. It's e-commerce company. We make home appliance parts and accessories, and we started noticing the cost of our vacuum bag started increasing. It was because the material of the bag is the same thing that the KN95 masks are made out of. So we noticed that we had a lot of this inventory, bless you, it was repurposed, and we partnered with a company in California, and we did a collaboration where if they buy a mask, they send them to us to buy the filter for the mask. It's pretty awesome, actually. I think that's one of the tips that I would probably give to people on the call today, is seeing where you can find adjacent brands in your space in the ecosystem where you can co-sell into the same demographic or the same ideal client profile. Kind of like the way that we're on the call today, but as e-commerce brands. So this company selling masks, we're supplying the filter media for the masks. It's a pretty awesome relationship. And I do think that's going to carry on into the future, not just for us, but there's been like even apps that are created now with Shopify where like if you're a furniture company and there's a company that makes bedding, you can essentially share that inventory with the other brand. So there's going to be an aggregation point of like, let's just say Burrow could start selling Casper sheets on their website, and they have a tight collaboration there. Same profile, distinct brand, but a nice JV. So with this surge that I've had in my business, what would you suggest for these newly acquired customers? What do I do to retain them? How should I approach it forward? If there's anything you can share, I'm sure other people on the call have been going through the same thing that I've been going through.
Yeah, definitely. I think you have to adopt a little bit more than just email marketing at this point. With the surge and just in e-commerce in general, everyone's inbox is getting flooded with marketing emails. So you have to think maybe a little bit outside the box just in terms of product offering. But there definitely needs to be this shared message between the 2 brands, and learn as much as you can from that customer. Maybe there's easy ways you can do this on the site, but one possible approach would be to set up a loyalty program, kind of get them engaged a little bit, show them, like award points, say if they were to share their product on social media. Now they've got, say, 100 points, and they want to use those points for something that's more specific to your brand. And then you start that story with them. You start engaging them a little bit more, and then you can increase that LTV with those customers. But social media engagement is definitely something that needs to be heightened if you're not already doing it. Yeah, I think
one of the things that we were doing, or a few things that I think that we've adopted, I'm going to just share openly here, is we started upselling. So as people came to our site and we wanted to liquidate certain items that were really slow movers, So yeah, we developed a kit bundle. We called it the Happy Home Quarantine Kit. So we took all the stuff that we wanted to get rid of and put it into that kit, and surprisingly, people have bought it. But also, we have an upsell on the site where, like, as they're going through the checkout process, it'll be like, "Bam! Since you're buying this, maybe you should buy this." And that strategy has been working for us.
For sure, yeah.
Klaviyo for sure. I mean, we use Klaviyo. We've been using that for sort of for our best customers and to win back customers. And then lastly, one really cool piece of tech that we've been using is something called Tone messaging. And essentially, it's kind of a win back campaign for SMS. And so, like, if somebody leaves our site or whatever, they have a bot that messages that individual to win back the customer. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, that is awesome. There's been a lot more adoption of SMS as of late. Just the numbers are definitely off the charts. And yeah, we are seeing the bundling. And then there's quite a few apps, especially like in the Shopify space, that offer those rebuys, those post purchases, sort of upsells and cross sales opportunities too. So.
Any ones you recommend people check out that you're fairly intimate with?
I mean, obviously, I'm a headless guy, and so anything that supports an API, a robust API, is Rebuy. They're actually here locally in Minneapolis, but I highly suggest them. Not just purchasing patterns of that customer, but also what other people bought, and being able to present that at the time of checkout, post checkout. It's pretty robust.
So, just can you clarify for me? So I know like BigCommerce has a headless platform, and Shopify. Do you specialize in one or the other? Have you picked a horse?
Yeah, I mean, 80% of our clients are on Shopify Plus. It's not to say that we don't support others. Platform-based solution, BigCommerce, but also Spree. Goop is on Spree. It's really anything that has, if you're looking at a platform, anything that has a robust API, because really that's like your headless system. And then on the front end, it can be a mobile app, native app, progressive web app. So it's really agnostic to what's underlying.
Yeah, I feel like there's been like so much funding going after headless. There's like Nacelle that just got some funding, and another company just got funding from a headless perspective.
Yeah, no, Nacelle's killing it. No, we love Nacelle too. They actually, not to put a plug in for them, but they just released a brand, Something Navy, and I think they did $1 million in 30 seconds after they launched on Nacelle.
Wow. Yeah,
pretty incredible. But yeah, to go back to your previous point, like you talk about big budgets. Something like a Nacelle, and there's like some tangential companies. They make it such that you don't have to have a big budget in order to become or to be on a progressive web app. They do a lot of that heavy lifting for you. So,
Got it. Okay, interesting. I don't know. We're on Shopify. I love the ecosystem. I mean, that's partly why Skubana, we built an app store at the same time, because plug and play ecosystem is probably the most important thing you can be doing when you're building a business on another platform, right? So you can make it extensible. You can bolt on and add strength to the platform. So all right, so let's move back to Kevin from fulfillment here on the 3PL side. Looks like we lost Sean Udacity. I think he has some low bandwidth.
I'm back. Hopefully you can see me.
I don't see your face.
All right.
I just actually doubled for $10 more. I doubled my bandwidth at my house. So it's maybe something you want to look into. So from a fulfillment perspective, from a 3PL perspective, Kevin, what else can you be sharing with us here? Insights, recommendations. I know you're working with some really cool brands over there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of. I do have a question for you, Chad. Kind of like pushing it back on you, just kind of a topic point, because I saw it come up in the chat here. Was and one of the things I think I really liked was kind of that quarantine kit. Like, have you been seeing any brands on the inventory level, especially, or even sales channel level, just kind of get creative with how they're moving inventory around? Because I know we're seeing brands on, I guess, more of the supply chain side. Like, let's just say, everyone, kind of going back to this decision on inventory, we're seeing brands do more of like, say, safety stock in these other locations, right? So they don't have to actively manage inventory. They're like, hey, look, we'll send a couple cartons to this SKU here. They're top SKUs, right? And they're offsetting that way. But have you guys seen anything from an inventory just management standpoint that brands are starting to do and like reacting or starting to get a pop-up or so?
Well, I can share. So a few things I've seen brands do. Specifically my brand and some others that I'm that are on Skubana and we're talking to on a daily basis. So the first, like I shared earlier, was like bundling low velocity with high velocity items and creating those kits. And it could be a quarantine kit. It could be like, essentially you never want to have people think, do I want to buy this, or buy this? So make them not think about it and put it together in a kit. I think that's one great way to increase your AOV and to increase your net profitability. Two is I'm a big believer in technology, right? So, I mean, my e-commerce business, Think Crucial, is I have one employee and it's 7-figure business. It's a pretty significant business. One employee and everything's automated. So in terms of like multi-warehouse functionality and being able to place your inventory as close as you can as possible to the customer, you need to have a tech stack that can work with you. I'm all about trying to figure out how can we use technology to make more money. And I think that's one thing that everyone should be doing on the call is like, where can you be reanalyzing your tech stack to figure out how can we eke out efficiencies, especially, in this environment. And so it comes down to, I like to, like when I go to a cocktail party, a lot of people are like, oh, how many employees do you have? And I'm like, typically you should be asking me, what's my revenue per employee, right? And I think that's a really great metric to look at as a ratio to understand how efficient you are relative to your competition or where you were 6 months ago or a year from today. So those are some like things that I'm thinking about as we're in this kind of crazy environment. And I'm also thinking about just like inventory, I'm trying to really stay on top of the momentum, right? Because we sell essential goods and the pandemic isn't going to be forever. So what are we going to do in the post-pandemic world once social distancing stops from an e-commerce perspective? What products should we be buying? How do we normalize the curve, right? So like right now we have that, just the same way the COVID curve is going up and to the right, our product velocity is going up and to the right. And how do you normalize that to properly predict and forecast? And using technology like Skubana is how we're able to do it in real time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, no, that's great. That's great because we're even seeing, it's interesting now because just with some of these spikes now, a lot of our brands are trying to flatten and say like they're from week to week, and it's interesting because it's mainly the subscription brands we have. If they have a lot of subscriptions, like say over the weekend, that's typically where they're getting it. So now I see some of our brands, it's pretty cool. They're trying to incentivize some of their customers to push their subscription back to say Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of the week, right? To kind of flatten the curve for orders too. So it's just really interesting to see how brands are kind of adapting to kind of some of these spikes, and they're riding the wave, or some of the things that they're trying to flatten back out and keep things more consistent. So just want to know your thoughts.
I also think that like I said, like we're not going to be in this pandemic forever, and people are itching to spend money. So yeah, $200 billion has been shifted from offline to online spending. And I think that's an important stat. But I also think that some of these brands should be enhancing the experience with pop-up shops in areas where there's been, where they're reopening back up, and putting yourself in prime real estate that's probably vacant in this point in time, using like a real estate firm like a Peer Here. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of them, but they take like vacant real estate space and allow you to have like a 1-week pop-up or a 2-week pop-up. I think those things are super interesting to me because those are the things that nobody is doing. And if you're doing things that nobody is doing, I think there's room to make money and capitalize that on that window of opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think another good point you had earlier, it reminded me of like kind of some of the dead SKUs of brands going back and cleaning those things up, and even just like rethinking their whole returns process, because like most brands in the past 4 to 6 months haven't been doing returns, at least a lot of the companies that we work with, and we've seen them getting kind of creative with a lot of the credits, the upselling, kind of going back to loyalty, how do you some of these merchant or customers on board outside of receiving a return. And so it's just really interesting too to see just the other areas that are kind of getting refined, I think a little bit more mature, that are normally like the redheaded stepchild of at least the fulfillment side of things. So that's been cool to see as well. And
how are you? Is Shipmunk doing anything on the return side? to even like flatten, because like obviously if people are buying a medium and a large, they're unsure, they don't go to the store anymore. How are you guys kind of suppressing the return process, or have you seen any technology that customers are using to sort of de-amplify those returns?
Yeah, so we so not to plug them either, but with returning, we integrate with them, and so a lot of brands we've seen, I don't know percentage, I say at least half the brands, they stopped doing returns for a period of time, or even till now. So they stopped doing returns. That was one thing, and then they're using stuff like Return to kind of get the fintech component of the returns process to see if they can do credits, whatever it may be in exchange. They've kind of tweaked the returns policy to be a little bit longer, right? Versus, hey, normally it's 30, 60 days return policy. Now they're doing, indefinitely returns policy, at some point. So we're seeing that. It depends, a lot of what we've seen too depends on the replacement value of the goods, right? So some brands kind of discontinue returns, or they're just automatically issuing credits for returns versus having to go through that hassle and just kind of provide a little bit of a better customer experience. So we've been seeing a lot of that stuff. But at the same time, like, we've been still processing a fair deal of returns. And really just, I think brands now have a little, like, I don't know why, but it seems like they pay more attention now to returns just because they don't want that inventory to sit. And so we've been working with another company called Corson to liquidate a lot of that stuff, different sales channels, and offset some of those things that would normally just compile and compound during other times of the year. So it's really interesting to see that as well.
And so have you seen like D2C increasing, but have you seen wholesale decreasing?
Yeah, so definitely wholesale. I mean, most of our business, 90+% of it's D2C. So, as a whole, everything, and that's been pretty forexing. So definitely see the wholesale kind of just completely fall out for a lot of brands. But for at least our brands, they had a really good mix. So the D2C took over, and I don't think they're upset about that, just because I think it's a cleaner process for them for the most part. But interested to see how that bounces back, because we're starting to see some of the wholesale stuff pick back up now, or at least kind of some of the small boutique wholesale stuff pick back up. So interesting how that bounces back, and if it goes back to where they were volume-wise from a wholesale standpoint, throughout the rest of this year.
Yeah, and Kevin, you have access to a broad mix of clients. Are you seeing everyone on the D2C side go up? Are you seeing that you saw a down and then it's now back up? Can you share with us just like categories? You don't have to mention brands. Just what are you seeing there?
Honestly, it seems like everyone's going up. And when everything first hit, we thought there was going to be kind of a quick spike. Everybody's home. It's going to drop out, and it's just been growing and growing and growing. And it's pretty much all categories. Even some of the, like, we do ship for some luxury brands or some items that are not an essential type of item, and even those are just going crazy. Even items with AOVs like $250, $300 plus. Their AOVs are increasing. Their picks. I mean, that's the other thing too. It's really interesting to see is like our picks per order have gone up about 50%. Just seeing more people buying more, and the AOVs are going up. And I don't know. I haven't really broken down by brand and category to see if they're doing a lot of stuff to increase the AOVs and offer more incentives there, or if it's just people are naturally buying more with those orders just because maybe they don't know the next time they're going to get it, or they have this like scarcity thing in the back of their mind, like this toilet paper syndrome, that they feel like if they don't buy it now, it's going to be gone forever. So we're seeing that go up a lot too. So just pretty much across the board, not even in just your essentials or your fitness type of brands, like pretty much everything. Cosmetics, it's interesting. Apparel, even goods that, I don't want to say workwear goods, but things that, like we joke with the webinar, like pants, put everyone wear pants again. It's like, hey, people are still buying pants and these other types of goods. So it's, for the most part, for us, everyone's just been crushing, and they're really, I think it goes back now towards their battle's not so much on the order standpoint, it's more on the inventory standpoint, and really optimizing that and really being able to manage that properly. And I think it's exposing a lot of those things that they've been weak on to this point.
Well, Kevin, you just shared why Skubana is on a tear right now.
Exactly.
Sean, so can we just talk about, I know you have customers that are D2C and are getting purchase orders, doing wholesale orders. Obviously, that from an inventory perspective, when someone submits a PO, you don't get paid on those purchase orders for a lot of these big box retailers. So if money is tight and we're in a pandemic, you're getting these big POs from retailers. What are you seeing there, if anything?
Yeah, I think our customers that have relied on that as a big part of their business, I think it's been just sort of scaled back a bit. I think those customers have tended to be a little more choosy on the products that they're potentially selling through wholesale, the price points. It's really, they're really just controlling the process a little bit more, I think, which I think is smart. As soon as you're selling through wholesale, you lose a little bit of control over the way things are going to look in the store, but you are gaining access to a group of customers that might not have found you otherwise. So, yeah, I think they're just being smart about which products they're offering. Making sure that it is good acquisition SKUs. Again, products that tend to lead to repurchases and higher lifetime value for customers, and then just making sure that your pricing is appropriate.
Cool. All right. So hopefully we dropped a lot of good nuggets here. We're going to take it back up to the top, Scott, and maybe we can just offer some information, value, and also just end with your email address or the best way to reach you if possible. Anything you want to share with those that joined us today, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Let's see. I talked already about headless and progressive web apps, so I don't want to overdo that. But I think that a couple things. One often overlooked element in e-commerce, especially today, is that of accessibility. A lot of, just like any one of us, we can't. People with disabilities can't go out and purchase products. They have to resort to online, and in e-commerce, design oftentimes takes precedence over accessibility. So not only do I think it's a good opportunity, but also it's definitely something that we should keep on top of mind. But also, if you are currently struggling and you don't want, I guess if you're currently struggling and you're right now you've pivoted, let's say you're selling masks, say if you've partnered, you've kind of transitioned your brand strategy elsewhere, you're in survival mode. It's important now to kind of look ahead and just anticipate that things won't change probably for a while. And if you're stuck in survival mode, you might end up just kind of killing your brand, all that money, all that work that you've put into your brand to get it to where it is. So you need to kind of figure out how to get out of that survival mode. Otherwise, you're now going to be a health company, you're going to be a mask company, you're going to be a hand sanitizer company. And so how to go about transitioning out of that phase. Maybe you have to pivot, maybe you have to adapt, like a loyalty program, subscriptions. Subscriptions is big because if something were to happen again, you at least can absorb some of that impact, and you can make your adjustments a lot more smoother. So yeah, so I guess maybe that's the last bit I'll say on that.
How can people reach you? Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to reach out, Scott at alphaomega.agency or marketing at alphaomega.agency.
Cool. And Scott, I think you bring up a really valid point. Nobody really discusses the ADA compliance with websites.
Right.
There are massive class action lawsuits right now going after a lot of brands, and no brand is resilient to what's happening with these class action lawsuits. So definitely a really good nugget. You may have just saved somebody a lot of money on this phone call, on this webinar. So awesome. Cool. All right, we're moving into Kevin here. Kevin, you're on mute, maybe? Rookie mistake?
Rookie mistake. Yeah, I would say the big thing for me is breaking down, I'd say your top issues, and then looking at, do you simplify it or do you mature it, right? Do you cut it out and not do it because it's creating a bottleneck, or it's not something that's scalable there, or not something that's needed right now, or do you take the time now to go back and say, hey, how do I look at my inventory and mature that, and look at disposition of inventory, and what are ways to do that, but in a simple way. I think that's the key there, and for every brand, I guess it's different. The best, and then if anybody listening wants to reach out to me, tell me their issues, I can help them walk them through it. The best way To reach me is Kevin at Chipmunk. Pretty simple. I'd be happy to look at it, break it down with them, and see what makes sense. And between Skubana and Chipmunk, there's a lot of things that can be done on both ends, right? To simplify the complex and make the complex simple.
All right, Sean, bring us home.
Yeah. So the one thing I'll mention that I haven't talked about yet. A lot of our customers, they're looking at their data as soon as the quarantine started. The first thing they thought was, all right, we need to slash marketing spend, right? And I think we saw that across the board. I think in a lot of cases it was a bit of a panic move, and I think what a lot of our customers have seen since then is they're getting amazing ROAS and cost per order numbers, numbers that they haven't seen for a while in different channels, and it's all just been a product of them testing which channels are working and keeping an eye on, again, just that return on ad spend number, keeping an eye on it and seeing which channels are really working. So I'll just kind of drop that as there are pockets of opportunity out there for pretty much everyone across the board.
I love that. I love that contrarian nugget. That's really good.
If you want to reach out, my email is sean@dacity.com. Also sales@dacity.com.
Cool. All right. Well, that's a wrap, everybody. If you want to reach out to me, my personal email is chad@skubana.com. If you have questions around inventory, multi-warehouse functionality, order, anything with automation, e-commerce, or if you just want to say hello, please feel free to reach out. I want to thank everyone for joining today and just being open and honest and just transparent about everything that's happening. And I appreciate your contribution. So thank you and have an awesome day.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.